As I said before, Class G airspace is the one I enjoy the most because Class G is uncontrolled airspace or go-for-it airspace. You can fly in Class G without ever having to talk to air traffic control. Why the difference? Well, in uncontrolled airspace, air traffic control provides no separation service for IFR flights. And what this means to you as a VFR pilot is that in uncontrolled airspace you can fly much closer to the clouds and probably still be safe and certainly be legal, because it's not likely that you'll see an IFR airplane come busting out of a cloud in that airspace. So in uncontrolled airspace, the distance required from clouds for VFR airplanes is less and the weather minima are less. We'll talk about these requirements later on. But in the meantime, let's take a look at a chart. Now, when you look at a chart, everything is Class G airspace unless it is designated otherwise. So Class G is shown on a chart by the absence of any other airspace class. And Class G airspace goes from the surface up to the base of any overlying airspace. Usually, that will be 700 feet or 1,200 feet above ground level, but it could be as high as 14,500 feet MSL. Let's take a look at the area with this magenta vignette. In this particular case, we have controlled airspace with a 700-foot AGL floor, shown by the fuzzy side of the magenta. Now, when you're on the fuzzy side of the magenta in here, you have Class G airspace under the floor of controlled airspace, and that means you have Class G from the surface to 700 feet AGL. Now, sometimes you'll have a floor of controlled airspace shown with blue. When you have a floor of controlled airspace shown by the fuzzy side of the blue, like so, that's a floor of controlled airspace at 1,200 feet AGL. Inside the fuzzy side of the blue, in here, Class G airspace goes from the surface to 1,200 feet AGL. Now, as I said, Class G airspace goes from the surface to the base of any overlying controlled airspace. So if you're on the distinct side of the blue vignette, out here, the Class G airspace goes from the surface up to 14,500 feet MSL. That's because all the airspace in the lower 48 states and Alaska at and above 14,500 feet MSL is controlled airspace. Now, this blue vignette right here, you will not see that in the eastern United States. That's because almost all the airspace, in fact, I'd go so far as to say all the airspace in the eastern part of the U.S. is controlled airspace above either 700 feet or 1,200 feet AGL. So they will not show this distinction on the chart. They don't even show the fuzzy side of the blue because they don't need to. Now, what is the significance to you and me as VFR pilots in Class G airspace? Well, now, once again, you can go for it in Class G airspace because it's uncontrolled. The weather requirements are less strict, and you do not have to talk to air traffic control. Now, if you do talk to ATC, they might give you safety alerts and traffic advisories when radar and communications equipment are available and their workload permits. If they do give you a safety alert, that means they'll warn you if you're dangerously close to another airplane or to terrain or obstructions. So now you know how to find uncontrolled airspace. It's what you have if you can't find any controlled airspace.